Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the 5 things that I dislike, aka hate, about the 2022 Lexus RX. Before getting the video though, I do want to mention if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get in the review. So the first thing has to do with the fact that parts of the car do feel a little bit outdated. Okay, so first off, you guys can see the key fob here. It doesn't have like its own remote start button on the key fob. A lot of manufacturers have kind of gone for that, so that's like a thing that you could consider a little bit more on the outdated side of things. And then if we pop here into the interior, again, everything's very simplistic, which some of you might like. But again, you could technically say it's quote unquote outdated. Instead of having like, you know, a bunch of fancy buttons, there's no like crazy ambient lighting here in the interior either. And then again, notice we've got tons of physical buttons here everywhere, which I personally like because again, I don't like having to dig through the infotainment system to change the climate or to turn on my heated or cooled seats. But just notice like the appearance of everything, and then including like the gauge cluster. Again, it doesn't necessarily look like the most modern. I still like the aesthetic of it, especially when you go into sport mode, for example, right? It looks pretty cool in sport mode. But again, you know, Lexus has had this gauge cluster for quite some time, and so some of you might feel like this isn't, you know, the most up-to-date. And I think the thing that might really show is like the navigation here. So you can kind of see, and you know, this is a touchscreen, but you can kind of see like the resolution on the navigation and all that. So again, like I said, it's, you know, everything makes sense and it's easy to use, but, you know, some of you might say that this is a little bit more on the dated side of things with how they have everything set up. So number 2 has to pertain to the acceleration of the RX. Now, I don't need to spend too much time on this point, but actually, you know, let's just go over the weight of the vehicle and then we'll go over the horsepower, and then I think that'll make my point for me. So we have the good old sticker here in the door jamb, and we actually got 920 pounds of payload capacity, which is pretty solid. But you can see gross vehicle weight rating, actually 6,000 pounds. You could ride off this whole bad boy, right? But suffice to say, right, gross vehicle weight rating is the payload plus, you know, the vehicle weight itself. So if you minus the payload from that, then you get the actual vehicle weight, which is right around like 5,200 pounds. So we have a, you know, SUV that's over 5,000 pounds. Pretty normal. And if we pop over here to the window sticker, so you can see we have 308 horsepower. So suffice to say, it's not slow, but it's not necessarily the quickest from an acceleration perspective. Now, number 3 has to pertain to the fact that I think that there should be a larger version of the RX. So I know that this point's probably going to get a lot of confusion from people, and potentially people are going to be mad at me, but I'm going to make it anyways. So I understand that Lexus makes larger vehicles, the LX and the GX. However, both of those are kind of more like truck-like SUVs that are, you know, again, dedicated to off-roading. This is a car-like SUV that is dedicated towards luxury and on-road use. And they make a version of the RX called the RXL that has a third row. And this is not an RXL, so I can't really show this to you guys, but at least I'll show you guys the back. In this format, this is great. This has a super practical trunk area, right? You can see we've got tons of storage space back here. But, here is my problem with the RX, especially in the RXL format. There's like no room in terms of, there's a little bit of room in terms of truck space once you add the third row. If you have the third row folded down, it's pretty decent. But also, there's not a lot of legroom with the third row. And so I think that Lexus needs to make, and maybe it needs to be a completely different model, but they need to make an RX-like SUV that has a third row that actually has space, right? So something that is similar in size to, let's say, like a Kia Telluride or like a Dodge Durango or Ford Explorer. That type of size where the third row could be used by kids, but then you still get like at least a little bit of storage space here in the back. Like that, like I said, the RX 350L or, you know, whatever, just the RXL. It's pretty cramped from a rear perspective, and so I think that should be something that Lexus could add. And again, maybe it wouldn't necessarily be under the RX name, but I thought I'd mention it because I know some of you might be looking at the L version of the RX, even though it's not, like, this is the most popular version, is getting just the regular RX, not the L. But yeah, I don't know. I think there should be a little bit more space for that version or something. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think on that one. Now, the number 4 thing actually pertains to the Lexus NX. Now, why would I be talking about the NX when we're talking about the RX? Here's the deal. The new NX just came out, and it makes the RX, again, to my first point, look slightly outdated from a stylistic perspective, and then with some of the interior elements. So first off, you guys know with my new NX review, like how they've stylized the front end on that looks beautiful. This looks amazing, but when you sit this next to the new NX, it's like, oh, kind of, you know, looks a little bit outdated, you know, stylistically. And then same thing with the rear end with the taillights and everything. Again, these taillights look fantastic, but compared to the new NX's like light bar situation, this doesn't look as cool. And they just recently redesigned this, and so it's kind of, yeah, I don't know. And then if we go to the front gauge cluster situation, so with the new NX, it has this cool like digital gauge cluster, and I don't know, it just has this cool modern appearance. Same thing with the new Lexus LX. And so then, yeah, again, it's just like, man, they need to throw that into the RX here. Infotainment system is fine. And then like how they have like the center cluster in the NX also. Just go watch my NX review so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. Get me more YouTube views. That's what I'm asking for, really. I'm just kidding. But anyways, go watch this. You can see like the whole center stack. I don't know. It just makes this like look like it needs to, even though they just got redone. It's yeah, it's like Lexus was like, hey, you know what? We're gonna save the good stuff for the NX. So yeah, I feel like that's something going against the RX, is that the new NX exists, and both. I mean, this is a bigger SUV, but like both of them are 2-row SUVs with 5-seater configuration, right? Even though this you can get with a 3rd row, which, like I just said in the last point, is not really usable. It's very small. Yeah, hopefully you get my point. Now, the 5th and final thing has to pertain to the fact that they don't make an F version of the RX. Well, this particular RX is, of course, an F Sport package, which what the F Sport package does is it gives you this cool F Sport badge, and wait for it, it gives you another F Sport badge here on the steering wheel, but it basically makes the car look sportier, right? You've got the wheels that look a bit sportier, and for some of the F Sport packages with Lexus, they'll actually tune the suspension to be a little bit sportier as well, but it's not it doesn't really change things too much, but it at least makes the car look a whole lot cooler. But we obviously have we used to have, doesn't exist anymore, the GSF. We have the IS 500, which is basically an ISF, and we've got the RCF, and we have the Lexus LC 500, and they all have a 5-liter naturally aspirated V8 with about 500 horsepower. Think about that in the RX. Now, obviously, that's kind of a pipe dream. Let's be realistic. They're probably not going to do that. But what they could do is they could put the new twin-turbo V6 that's in the LX in the RX. They could also put that in the NX. They could just put it in any of their SUVs, and then that could be the F version of the SUV. I think that there is, well, not I think, I know there's a market for that, because we have the new Acura MDX Type S, which is like mid-300s for the horsepower. And people are absolutely loving that. They are flying off the shelf right now, and that's similar in size to this, and it's a, you know, luxury 3-row SUV. Obviously, this isn't 3-row, but they sell a 3-row version of this. But the point that I'm trying to make is there is a market for higher performance, you know, luxury SUVs like this. Obviously, I mean, BMW and Mercedes and Audi, they show that. And so I think that Lexus should do that. And this looks the part, right? Look at this. Like, this has so many sharp lines. And that's the thing that's kind of interesting about Lexus is, like, this looks so sporty and it looks so cool. And from a driving perspective, it's not, right? It's very comfortable. It's very luxurious. Like, when you go over bumps, you barely feel it. The suspension on this is amazing, but like it's got 300 horsepower, and it's not all that fast because it's a CVT hybrid with this particular one. If you get the regular V6 version, you know, it feels good, but again, that competes against like a regular MDX, not the MDX Type S. And so, yeah, I know I've said on this point for a long time, but seriously, with Lexus's sporty styling, they should have a sporty powertrain with this, whether it's the 5.0 V8, which I don't think with, you know, emissions restrictions and all that's realistic, or the new twin-turbo V6. I mean, let me know if you'd buy that. I think, like, if Lexus made this with, you know, maybe a slightly bigger 3rd row, and with the twin-turbo V6, I think that would be such a cool family car, and I know people would buy it. Now, let's get some things up for the 5 things that I dislike or hate about the 2022 Lexus RX. I want you guys to let me know if there's anything that you think I missed in today's video. And with that being said, as always, if you want to save time, money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. I will see all of you in that next video.